Word from BP, a leak spilling hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil into the Gulf every day may be contained by early next week. A trio of senators has a plan to make oil companies pay for their spills up to as much as $10 billion. And Governor Schwarzenegger says hasta la vista to California offshore drilling in the wake of the Gulf disaster.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for the Energy Report. BP's chief executive says a containment dome designed to cover the Gulf oil leak will be on the seabed this Thursday. CEO Tony Hayward said today if all goes according to plan, the principal leak could be contained by early next week. But he stresses this procedure has never been done before at a depth of 5,000 feet, and he says there are no guarantees. Meanwhile, calmer weather and seas have allowed workers to drop booms to corral some of the oil today. Fishermen banned from fishing are being hired to drop those booms. While BP has not succeeded in shutting off the well, crews do report progress with a new method for cutting how much oil reaches the surface. They're using a remotely operated underwater vehicle to pump chemicals into the oil to break it up before it rises. Oil on the surface is being sprayed with chemicals from airplanes to break up the slick. President Obama spoke today about the spill.
We are committed to preventing as much of the economic damage as possible by working to contain the impact of this potentially devastating spill.
The well continues to spew an estimated 200,000 gallons of crude a day. In the midst of the blame game now underway over the Gulf disaster, 3 coastal senators want oil companies to be liable for even more of the financial burden of oil spills. Today, Democrats Bill Nelson from Florida and New Jersey's Robert Menendez and Frank Lautenberg discussed their legislation, the Big Oil Bailout Prevention Act. They say right now, companies responsible for spills must pay for the resulting cleanup efforts, no matter the cost, but the amount they must pay for economic damages can be no more than $75 million. The senator's bill would raise that maximum liability cap for economic damages to $10 billion. And they used BP's legal obligation under the current cap as an example of the need for change.
The reality is that they have a mere $75 million cap in liability. I don't think $75 million is going to help the shrimp fishermen in Louisiana. I don't think it's going to help the commercial fishermen. I don't think it's going to help the tourism industry. I don't think it's going to be enough to help the coastal communities. I don't think it's going to be enough to restore estuaries that are incredibly important to our way of life.
On Thursday, the Senate Energy Committee will discuss amendments to the energy bill that it passed back in June, a bill that includes new offshore energy exploration in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Today, Clean Skies asked Menendez if he plans to introduce any amendments restricting offshore drilling. The senator says he is considering his options, but he expects there to be, in his words, some resistance in the committee. California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger has withdrawn his support for a plan to expand oil drilling off the California coast. The governor had proposed drilling off the coast of Santa Barbara County to help offset the state's $20 billion budget deficit. A deal struck in 2008 between environmental groups and Plains Exploration was estimated to bring the state about $100 million a year. The governor's budget had set aside that money to keep state parks open in the next fiscal year.
Before you make a decision like that, you are convinced, that this will be safe. But then again, you see that. You turn on television and you see this enormous disaster, and you say to yourself, why would we want to take that risk? And so the risk is just much greater than the money is worth. So we will figure out how to deal with that extra $100 million problem. California is a leader in protecting the environment. California is a leader in rolling back the greenhouse gases. And we are also a leader at the same time in green technology. So we know that we're creating right now a tremendous amount of jobs in the green technology sector. So you can have a sound economy and a good economy and also protect the environment at the same time. But that does not hold back any greedy oil companies from Texas to come in to California and trying to roll back our progress that we have made.
Royal Dutch Shell says it spilled nearly 14,000 tons of crude oil into the environmentally sensitive creeks of the Niger Delta last year. The company made the announcement in its annual environmental impact report and blames the majority of the spills on two incidents. One in which thieves damaged a wellhead at its Odidi field, and the other where militants bombed the Trans-Escravos pipeline. The amount was more than double what was poured into the Delta in 2008, quadruple what was spilled in 2007, highlighting the worsening situation the company faces in Nigeria. Shell says it was able to recover nearly 10,000 tons of last year's spilled oil, but the company faces regular attacks by militants who target pipelines, kidnap petroleum company workers, and fight government troops. That's been happening since 2006 as it seeks a larger share of the nation's oil revenues for the impoverished region. EPA says it's about to start developing regulations for coal ash, but it's still unclear if the coal combustion waste will be considered hazardous or non-hazardous. Right now, coal ash is regulated by what EPA Administrator Jackson calls a patchwork of state regulations. The agency's been under pressure to come up with a national standard since the December 2008 ash impoundment collapsed at the Tennessee Valley Authority's Kingston plant. Thousands of acres near that plant were covered with ash goo. Jackson announced today that the agency is starting a 90-day comment period on two federal regulatory options, one classifying ash as hazardous waste, forcing a phase-out of existing impoundments. The other would classify it as non-hazardous, but require that impoundments be retrofitted with protective liners. Both options still allow for ash recycling. EPA will review the comments before deciding which route to take, and Jackson says the agency doesn't have a preferred option. Environment ministers come to an agreement of sorts in Bonn. About 40 nations agreed on taking individual steps to fight global warming, but otherwise little progress was made during this three-day meeting. Co-hosts Germany and Mexico still say it's an important step on the road to December's UN climate conference in Mexico. Germany's environment minister said headway was made on several sticking points, including saving forests and transferring climate technology to developing countries. But the toughest issues, cutting greenhouse gases and creating a system of financial aid, are still unresolved. There are several more rounds of formal and informal talks scheduled before December. The Golan Heights between Israel and Syria is better known for fierce tank battles than renewable energy. That could be about to change, though. Israel's first and only large-scale wind farm went up about 18 years ago when these turbines were built. Well, now, Israel-based Multimatrix is teaming up with U.S.'s AES to build 160 turbines in the Golan Heights that will produce 450 megawatts of energy a year. Construction on the first 7 turbines is expected to begin next year at a cost of $27 million. The rest will be erected over 2 years at a cost of about $800 million. Israeli Infrastructure Minister Uzi Landau says it's a cost-saving decision. He says that compares to solar and wind farms that need minimal government subsidies and take up less land.
Most of the attention was focusing on solar, but wind is very attractive as far as the price associated with the production of energy based on wind is going, and the potential to have it in a variety of different places in Israel. I should also say that as much as I learned, even over the past few months, there are some progress made in terms of the efficiency in the use of wind turbines, which are very suitable to our condition.
Israel has set a target of generating 10% of the country's energy from renewable sources by 2020. The rest of Israel's energy sector will be split between natural gas from its new offshore wells and imported coal. Let's check now on some goings-on around the Beltway tomorrow. 11 a.m., the D.C. Transportation Department displays a new streetcar scheduled to return to operation in 2012. That's at the city center through Saturday the 8th. 2:30 p.m., Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack and other administration officials have a Clean Energy Economy Forum at the White House to highlight clean energy opportunities for rural communities throughout the country. And tomorrow, the website 350.org launches the Great Power Race, clean energy competition among students in America, China, and India. That's the Energy Report. We'll see you again tomorrow with your latest energy news. For any suggestions or comments about our programming on Clean Skies News, we'd like to hear from you. You can email us at contact@cleanskies.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. From all of us here in the Energy News Center, have a great day.